purpose is its purpose really is for what we call gas exchange. For taking in oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide. As a reminder, that oxygen is needed for each of our cells for the process of cellular respiration. When our mitochondria of our cells use oxygen and glucose to form ATP, energy the cell can use. Same time, cellular respiration produces the waste product of carbon dioxide, which we need to get rid of. That happens with the respiratory system.
What's that beeping noise? Yeah,
so we breathe in and out using our diaphragm, this muscle stretched across the bottom of the rib cage that contracts, allowing us to breathe in, and relaxes, allowing us to breathe out. All right. Yeah.
When it contracts, it's like a vacuum, right?
Yes. All right. So
Those are bronchi.
contracting, we'll go over that. Brings air into your lungs, relaxing things out. So again, I know some of you don't like the gross pictures, so you may want to look away for the next slide.
Oh, watch the video again.
Oh, no, not that one, the next one. Yeah.
Oh. That's a mix of you two.
So, oh, you guys are looking, wow, you got me. So anyway, breathing in
That's a mix of you two.
is
Like
taking in oxygen, taking in air, and the air we breathe in has 21% oxygen, 79% nitrogen, and just this very, very small amount of carbon dioxide. After we inhale that air and the gas exchange takes place, the air that comes out when you exhale is 16% oxygen, so some of the oxygen is gone because we've absorbed some, and the CO2 level is increased because we've gotten rid of our carbon dioxide. And so as we breathe in and out, we're exchanging these gases. Right? And you have to breathe constantly in order to stay alive because you need a constant source of oxygen. You need to get rid of that carbon dioxide. Okay, so this is where we left off. So let's talk about parts of the respiratory system. So when you breathe in, you know you can breathe in through your nose. You can breathe in through your mouth. Okay, and we can do that because they are connected. Inside of your head, you have what's called the nasal cavity that connects sort of your nose to your mouth. And so breathing through your nose brings that air in. Okay, but as you know, you have little hairs inside of your nose. And they have a purpose. What else is inside of your nose?
Mucus.
Mucus.
Cells.
There's cells. And that stuff has a purpose. Okay?
Mucus makes you want to die.
So what is the purpose of mucus inside of your nose?
There to capture bacteria.
Yeah, it's there, and it's along with the hairs to capture, as you breathe in air, any impurities, any little dust particles floating around. They can be filtered out using those hairs, and the mucus captures them so that the air going into your lungs doesn't have those things in it, or not as much. Some of it's still in there. So you breathe through your nose. Also, as that air goes through the passage through the back of your nose, through your throat, it gets warmed up a little bit to allow for better exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Yeah, Holly?
Doesn't mucus originally start out as clear and then it turns green?
It can change color and consistency depending on, like if you have a cough or something and you cough in the mucus, you cough up this kind of clear, often just congestion. But other times if it's green and dark, then it may be a sign of an infection. So yeah.
So if you were to would you be getting cleaner air?
A little bit, yeah. Then because when you breathe in through your mouth, aren't those hairs in that mucus to really catch that stuff. So yeah, generally you'll filter out some more of that stuff if you breathe through your nose. Tanya?
Last week, the reason why I wasn't here, I had some kind of the flu. So then my mom brought me to the doctor's and she said she thought I had flu at first, but and then she said bronchitis.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. So, we breathe in. And as we breathe in, air goes through our nose or our mouth. It's called the pharynx. Okay? And then, when we breathe, it goes through the trachea. So we talked about digestive system. We have a tube going down our chest, our esophagus, to carry food to our stomach. But there's another tube in front of the esophagus, which is the trachea, your windpipe. It's what you feel right here in your throat, in the front. Okay? In your larynx there, your voice box, okay, which has your vocal cords, which vibrate, allowing you to speak. So air goes down this trachea. It's a windpipe, sometimes called. It's reinforced with these rings of cartilage that are strengthen it, because obviously if your windpipe collapses, if it's damaged, that can cause you not to be able to breathe, and you need to breathe to live. It's still beating? Because they're not sort of, one doesn't depend on the other really. So you hold your breath, so you're not taking new oxygen into your lungs, but your heart still beats. But over time, okay, the blood, carbon dioxide levels in the blood builds up because you're not exhaling, so you're not getting rid of it, and that causes you to start to feel weird, and causes you to start to breathe again.
I have 2 questions. Would it be bad if somebody like blew their nose a lot and like shaved their nose hairs?
That wouldn't be great.
But you don't want like nose hairs.
Yeah, but I mean, nose hairs sticking out of your nose are not really necessary, but those hairs go all the way up into your nasal passage. So
I mean, if
go
someone's shoving
ahead,
something
go
that far
ahead,
out
trim
there.
those nose hairs if you want.
Yeah.
That's okay.
And
And it goes through and like whips them all up like a weed whacker.
Yeah. We can start treating these that everyone.
could you like die if you were
With the
holding
same
your breath too long, or
Yeah.
would you pass out? And
Well, usually you pass out, but people. So some people train themselves basically to hold their breath for a much longer period of time. Now, if you go in the pool and you go in water and try and hold your breath, I don't know, maybe the max when you go is 20 or 30 seconds probably.
I can do 2 minutes.
I
So-
can, yeah, I can do it. I can
so
do it in
if
an
you,
hour.
If you train yourself, you can work on your breathing, and there's various things you do. Some people can hold their breath for several minutes, 5 minutes, competitive divers and so forth. But people do die doing that. So sometimes
But like,
there's...
if they're above water and hold their
No,
breath?
generally if you're above water, you hold your breath. First of all, your involuntary reflex, you just gasp for air. I mean, you can't really hold your breath purposefully, probably until you pass out. Because you're just, then once you do pass out, you stop holding your breath and you start breathing again.
Okay.
Yeah,
What do you mean hopefully? Like,
unless you have some problem and
Oh,
you
okay.
don't. Yeah.
because
What if you get the hiccups underwater?
You still hiccup, I guess. All right.
I've always
Well, what was happening was I was trying to see how long I could hold my breath, but
Yeah.
I wasn't underwater.
Right.
And I was wondering if I would like pass out. and
Probably.
die.
You would either eventually pass out or your involuntary reflexes take over. You just couldn't hold your breath any longer.
would it be, could we hold our breath longer underwater? Like,
No, we'll say about this one.
Yeah, I really.
Yeah.
All right. So the trachea brings air down through your nasal passage into your chest, and then. So let's get.
Yeah, grab her by the neck.
So what you
Yeah, why
see
don't
here
you choke her while you're at it?
in blue on this model is the trachea. Here is an endocrine gland. Which one? Thyroid gland. The trachea continues down. You see it's in blue here. Down after it gets into the chest, it splits into 2. So this tube comes down, then splits into 2. Those 2 main branches of the trachea, okay, they're called the bronchi. So if we follow the trachea down, splits onto each side, the left and right, those are the bronchi. And as you know, Tanyelle, you just mentioned it, sometimes you can get a bacterial infection in those bronchi. And that's what we call bronchitis, an infection in those 2 tubes. And so then those tubes, follow, here's one bronchi, then they branch again. Okay?
wait, so
And then they branch again. And they repeatedly branch, getting small, just like branches on a tree, starts off wide, and each time it splits off, gets smaller and smaller. The same is true in the lungs. These branches eventually form what we call bronchioles. And then at the very end of them, eventually they have to end, obviously. And the place where they end are called alveoli. Alveoli are these little clusters of tissue that is where oxygen is absorbed and carbon dioxide is released. And they look like broccoli or a cluster of grapes. All right, I'll go back. Oh.
Whoa.
Nah, hold on.
I have a question now.
Hold on. Finish right.
I see green coffee in the corner. Is that
Yeah, there's the green one. Nah,
Would water pressure have an effect on how long people do that?
I don't think so. Not really.
I've been on my back for
David?
1 minute.
You just said you're
All right. CJ, what was your question?
Okay, I thought that bronchitis you only get when you like ingest smoke because when I was watching Sweet Brown's video, she's like, I got bronchitis.
No. Anyone?
Okay, how do you get bronchitis?
Just if you're sick and you have an infection, sometimes those bacteria, like you might just have a cold and you may have viruses in your upper trachea and you're coughing and you're congested. But sometimes some of those bacteria, the viruses work their way into the bronchi and cause an infection there.
Can smoke cause it?
She said I got it from a cold, a really nasty
Yeah.
cold, and something
Sometimes-
was going on in my
Sometimes the cold can turn into bronchitis if that virus spreads into the lungs. All right. So in these alveoli, these little clusters, this is where diffusion happens. So the way it looks, so again, this is one of these clusters. So this is the end of a bronchiole, and at the end, these are alveoli. You can see they are all surrounded by blood vessels, very tiny capillaries. And so what happens is this yellow is an alveoli. So as air comes in, as fresh air fills up this little cluster, the blood that's traveling right near it, as it's going by, that blood that you should know from back when we talked about vertebrates, that blood is low in oxygen, okay, coming from the heart. So there's high oxygen in the air you breathed in, low oxygen in the blood cells, so which way will oxygen move? Diffusion always moves things from high to low concentration. There's a high concentration of oxygen in the lungs, a lower concentration in the blood cells, so oxygen goes into the blood cells by diffusion. At the same time, where is there a higher concentration of carbon dioxide to begin? Blood cells or in the air? No, in the blood cells. Remember, those blood cells getting shipped to the lungs are high in carbon dioxide because they removed it from cells. So the carbon dioxide goes out of the blood cells, and that's what you exhale. So the blood cells gain oxygen in the alveoli, and they get rid of carbon dioxide. And they send it into the air, and then we exhale. So the blood that leaves the lungs is high in oxygen, low in carbon dioxide. Here's another description. So blood coming in around the alveoli, gets rid of its carbon dioxide, takes in oxygen, sort of gets refreshed.
If somebody is like almost sleeping, would they be able to hold their breath longer because their heart's not?
Yeah, if your heart's rate is being slower, if you're still, if you're not using your muscles, you require less oxygen, and therefore can hold your breath longer. So we look here, just another diagram here. We have the trachea, brings air in to the lungs. The lungs branch smaller and smaller till they form these